Okay, this is 2.2, General Sinusoidal Graphs. I want to review some definitions that we went over in class. So the amplitude is the height. I like to say it's the height of the wave. Height of wave. And this always has to be positive. Your cycle is going to be basically, so you have your sine function. Remember, your sine function starts in the middle. It increases and then decreases and then ends in the middle. And then that's one cycle. And then when it starts to repeat, that's going to be your second. Your cosine, remember it starts at the top. It looks like just a U. So that's one cycle for the cosine function. Your period is going to be the degrees or radians in which your one cycle occurs. Okay, so I'm going to show you how you would graph one cycle of this, and then I'll show you two cycles here in a minute. Okay, so first of all, you've got to remember what this first number is. This is your A, so this is your amplitude. So I would say my amplitude, first of all, is 8. And this is from your sinusoidal axis. And then this number right here is your B value. And you actually don't write down your B, you use your B. So what I would do is I would say my period. And we're always going to use radians. So I'm going to say 2 pi divided by 1/2. And remember, you do leave, change, flip, and that's going to give me 4 pi. And then I'm going to go ahead and find my critical points. I'm always going to take my period, so 4 pi, and I'm going to divide that by 4. And I'm always going to divide by 4. Always, always, always. And that gives me pi. My critical points are basically those are my dots, okay? So I'm going to start here at 0, and I'm going to do a critical point of pi. So this is pi. My next one is going to be 2 pi, 3 pi, and so on. So I'm just adding pi every time. Now, why do I divide by 4? Because I have 4, you can think of 4 quadrants or 4 quadrantal lines. That's where I get those. There's 4 of these. Okay, you can keep going if you want to do all of these. 6 pi, 7 pi, and 8 pi. I'm going to do an amplitude, so that means the height of my wave. I'm going to go up 8 and down 8. Now you can make this your 8, or you can make the top line your 8. It totally doesn't matter. Remember, that's your height. Okay, so now since this is my sine function, I know it starts in the middle, it goes up, then it goes down, and it ends in the middle. Okay, so I'm going to start here, and each critical point, I'm going to make a dot. So I'm going to go middle, I'm going to go up, I'm going to go middle, I'm going to go down, I'm going to go middle. And if you make it as curvy as you can, that is one cycle. And you can say the period, the degrees that it is, or the radians that it is 4 pi. That's one cycle. Then that's my second cycle. And I lied, I did 2. Just because it was easy and I could go ahead and show you. Okay, it says consider the parent function, just plain Jane sine of theta. It says describe the transformations. Okay, so if I add an A to the very, very front, what happens to this? I'm going to shift up, and I want you to go ahead and tell me how much. I'm going to shift up 5 units. What happens if I take my A and I subtract it? I'm going to shift down 3 units. This value inside here is your D. So what happens to your D? Inside the parentheses, remember you're always doing opposite. So if you add this, then you're going to go left, and this would be pi units. You're always going opposite. And this right here, it says 3 pi over 4. I'm going to go right, 3 pi over 4 units. This right here, when you're doing up and down 5, this is your vertical shift, and your D is going to be your left and right shift. That is going to be your horizontal shift. Okay, it says compare and contrast the graphs of. So right here, this is still my A value in front. So what happens if I add a negative in front? And same with cosine. Okay, I'm going to draw my original sine and my original cosine. So if you have your graph, remember sine starts in the middle, goes to the top, middle, down, and middle. So this is my original sign. So what happens when I throw a negative in front of it? So your A value is going to flip or reflect it over. So this value is going to come down here. So this is going to go down first. And this value is going to go up. Your cosine, what would happen with it? Remember, cosine starts at the top first, then goes middle, down, middle, and top. It's like a U. So instead of starting at the top first, it's going to stop at the bottom. Still goes to the middle. Each value is going to be reflected over the x-axis. So it's going to make a hill instead of a U. So these values right here, we're going to flip or reflect over the x-axis. So your amplitude, your A value, is going to be your highest and your lowest point. This is your amplitude. Your B really doesn't do anything on your graph, but it helps you find things. So I'm going to say helps find the period, and therefore helps you find the critical points. Your C value, and I totally called this A up here. This is not A. This is C. Your C value is going to be your shift up and down. And your shift up and down, again, is your vertical shifts. Your D value, which we talked about up here, your D value is going to be your left and right shift. And again, your left and right shift are your horizontal shifts. Graph with all of this information. And how I graph this is I'm going to find every bit of information here. Amplitude is 6. The period. Remember, the period is not given, but you have to use this in order to find it. So I'm going to say 2 pi divided by pi over 5. And when you flip that and multiply, you get 10. You use this number in order to find your critical points. You take your 10. You always divide by 4. Let's see, that reduces to 2.5. This number right here, this 5, tells me that I'm going to shift down 5. This number right here says I'm going to have a horizontal shift, and I'm always going to do the opposite direction. So I'm going to say I'm going to go to the right 2. I'm going to draw an X and Y axis, and I'm going to make this my shift. That means I'm going to say I went to the right 2, so this is my positive 2 already. I went down 5, so this is my negative 5 already. Now, if this is confusing, I can show you a different way to do it. I'm going to go ahead and do my amplitude. So I'm going to go from my negative 5, and I'm going to go up and down from that. When you go down from negative 5, that's an amplitude of negative 11. And when you go up from negative 5, that's an amplitude of 1. So here is my point. This is my new sinusoidal axis. Okay, now from here, I'm going to make some tick marks. And I'm going to try to make them as even, and I'm going to try to do 2 cycles. Okay, if this is a positive 2, I'm going to take 2, and I'm going to add a critical point of 2.5. That's my next critical point. So if this is 2 right here, my next critical point would be 4.5. And I'm going to keep adding 2.5 each time. Okay, and I'm going to stop because I'm not sure how many critical points I need. Okay, I look at this and it says sine. Remember, sine starts in the middle, goes up, down, and middle. So this is my new axis, so this is my middle right here. This is start. So it goes middle. Each critical point is a point. So middle, top, middle, down, middle. Okay, so when I connect these, remember this is 1 cycle. So it takes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to make 1 cycle. Okay, so this is my x-axis, this is my y, and if I finish this, so middle, from here to here, this is a cycle, just to let you know. And this from 2 to 12 tells me my period. Well, here it says 10, but remember I started at 2, so if you subtract those, that gives me my cycle of 10, or my period of 10. Okay, it says label all critical points, which I did. Identify the domain and range. Okay, domain. Domain starts at 2 and goes to 22. Now, realistically, I can keep going this direction, and I can go this direction. So I'm going to say my domain is negative infinity to positive. And you can say that on every one of them because I'm just taking a section of my graph, but it does keep going. Your range does not. It goes from negative 11 up to 1. And I'm bracketing these because it actually stops. If you understand, you can stop the video. I've got 2 more graphs to show you. Okay, on this one, here's another sine graph. I'm going to start with this one right here, this negative 7. This is an amplitude of 7, but that means that my sine graph is going to be opposite because of that negative number. That means it's going to start in the middle and go down first, then up, and end in the middle. My period is going to be 2 pi divided by the 2. That leaves me with just a pi. For critical points, remember you take your period and you divide by 4. This 3 right here tells me that I'm going to shift up 3. And this pi over 4 says that I'm going to go opposite. I'm going to go to the left, pi over 4. I'm going to draw an axis. Now remember, these are my new axes. So this is up 3. This is a positive 3. And this is, since it's left, I'm going to say this is a negative pi over 4. Okay, now when I add critical points and I go to the right, I'm going to add, so I'm starting at negative pi over 4. I'm going to add pi over 4. So my next critical point is 0. And if I add pi over 4, then that's pi over 4. Now, the nice thing about this is I don't care if you reduce each time. So if you add pi over 4, that's 2 pi over 4. Plus another one is 3 pi over 4. And I'm totally fine if you leave it that way. This is your x-axis and your y. And I'm just using whatever they have here. Okay. Again, remember I told you that this sine is going to go opposite. So this is my new axis. I'm starting in the middle. Whoops, I forgot to do my amplitude. I'm doing an amplitude of 7. I'm starting at 3, 10. And then if I go down, then that's going to be negative 4. Now let's graph. So again, this is my middle. I'm going to go down first. And remember, this keeps going. And this keeps going. If you do your domain, it's all real numbers. Remember, infinity has a parentheses because it keeps going. Your range is negative 4 to 10. You always do your low number first, bottom to top. And I'm going to do brackets. I would suggest you try this on your own, but I understand if you want to watch this one last time. Okay, we have a cosine one. This one is opposite. So I'm going to do an amplitude 2. Since it's negative, your cosine is going to go opposite. So it's going to be a hill, period. Take your 2 pi and divide it by your b value, which is 1 over 4. That gives you an answer of 8 pi. Take your critical points, take your period, which is 8 pi, and divide it by 4. This gives you critical points of 2 pi. Okay, let's look at our shifts. It looks like we're going to go up 5. We're going to go right pi. All right, let's look at this. So if we go up 5 and we go right pi, if we start at pi, we're going to add 2 each time. So pi plus 2 gives me 3. Okay, our amplitude. We started 5. We have an amplitude of 2. If you notice, I just kind of estimate on this just so that I can see the graph. So I'm going to go up 2 to 7, and I'm going to go down 2 to 3. So cosine does not start in the middle. It usually starts at the top, but this time we're going to start at the bottom, middle, and it looks like I need one more. So I'm going to go back and fill that in. Doing your domain, it's still the same, negative infinity to positive because it keeps going. Your range, Looks like it's going to be from 3 to 7. Okay, bring your questions to class.